So happy to have all of you here today. I'm so proud to welcome you to the Texas Cannabis Policy Conference 2026.
My name is Heather Fazio. I'm the director of the Texas Cannabis Policy Center, and it is such an honor to be able to host an event like this with such incredible people contributing to making it possible, coming to attend, to learn from each other so that we have the best possible future for cannabis in Texas. I have to give some very special thank yous to our top sponsors, Village Farms, Rare Earth Genomics, and Maverick PR has graciously offered resources to provide the live stream available for those who couldn't be here today, as well as the videos that are going to be available next week for the content that you weren't able to attend. Having a conference like this means that there's multiple tracks. You can only attend one at a time, which means that there's good stuff that you're missing while you're here. And so we're going to make those videos available as soon as possible and couldn't do it without the generous support of Maverick PR. So thank you so much for being here. I also couldn't do this event without the incredible team of volunteers who helped get us set up yesterday, helped us host a really fun party last night at the Belmont, if you were there, and getting us set up this morning for this great event. So thank you to the whole team. And I want to give a very special thank you to my colleague over the last year who's been integral in helping to get this event funded through sponsorships. She's been incredible with our communications and social media. Holly McCord has been an integral part of hosting this event, and I have to give her a big thank you for her contributions. People have come together for this conference from across the state, across the country, and from across the world. Our furthest friends have traveled from the Northern Mariana Islands, and for those of us who needed a geography brush up, it's near Guam between Hawaii and the Philippines. They are soon to roll out their regulated market for cannabis, looking for opportunities to learn how it's done and learn from those who are doing it. And so they have attended this conference, and we are so grateful to welcome them to Austin and to the U.S. to learn more about cannabis and take it back to their country so that they can implement policies of their own. We have local officials speaking, and they'll be talking about the cost of enforcing prohibition policies and the economic benefit that the cannabis industry offers locally. In attendance, we have council members from Dallas all the way to Anchorage, Alaska. We have a city council person from Alaska joining us, again, learning more about the impact of cannabis policy and how they can do it right in their hometowns. We'll learn from current and former regulators and states so that we can adopt best practices and avoid pitfalls. You know, we all wish that we would have been in the place we are now a whole lot sooner. Fewer people arrested, cannabis available more soon, and businesses thriving. Nonetheless, though, here we are today, and we have the benefit of hindsight of the other states who have moved forward sooner than we did. So let's learn from those folks. Let's, again, learn those best practices and try to avoid the pitfalls so we have the best policies possible here in Texas. In attendance here, we have Texas regulators. We have legislative staff from both the House and the Senate, and that includes legislative counsel, the folks that are actually writing the bills. They're interested in learning about this. It's a serious issue. It's being taken seriously at the Capitol, and thank goodness we have folks that are looking at this as an opportunity to learn more about how we can do it right moving forward. By bringing policy makers together, regulators, industry representatives, advocates, we set the stage for stakeholders to encourage meaningful discussions focused on the future of cannabis in Texas. Not only did we experience the ride of our lives last year, am I right, during the legislative session, but cannabis continues to make its way through the courts and the regulatory agencies. Progress is being made toward establishing and growing licensing and regulation of all three sectors of the cannabis marketplace. We have the medical cannabis side of things, and we have the non-consumable hemp side of things, as well as consumable hemp products. The regulatory machine is working in all sectors. And of course, that's what we're here to learn more about and to continue being engaged in that process. Statewide elected officials are taking this issue seriously. They're talking about cannabis and in favorable ways. And that it marks huge progress. Obviously, Governor Abbott vetoing the Death Star prohibition bill from last year was significant. And this means that he opted instead for better regulations and, most importantly, adequate enforcement of those regulations. That has been one of the things that we've been lacking. We've had rules on the books since 2019. But the agencies have not quite stepped up in a way that gives the confidence that consumers and the public need in order to feel good about having this industry in their communities and in their states. We are finally seeing that really take hold now, thanks to the decisive leadership of Governor Abbott with his veto and subsequent executive order. Of course, all of this is happening with the backdrop of inconsistent and rapidly changing federal policy. These threats persist and advocacy will continue. The same prohibitionist efforts that were made in Texas are now occurring in Washington, D.C. The nation watched Texans rally in support of free markets, individual liberty, and regulations that ensure public health and safety. Advocates from every state are now directing their attention toward Congress with a united effort to roll back the devastating provision that was snuck into must-pass legislation last year during the historic government shutdown. This underhanded approach was the only way they could get something like this passed, and they know it. They know that the vast majority of Americans, including the voters in their districts, prefer regulation to prohibition. So they had to sneak that provision in. And now we're seeing the repercussions of that with folks rallying against that and trying to roll it back. This underhanded approach reminds me of how they got Senate Bill 3 passed. We know that Senate Bill 3 was forced upon the Texas House after passing the Senate. And because they were holding critical legislation hostage to coerce lawmakers in one chamber to pass wildly unpopular legislation in another. Last year, we experienced an unprecedented series of legislative sessions. It was a marathon, and that included cannabis as a top priority issue for state leaders. This is the first time this issue has been a top priority in Texas. Of course, we've been working on this for years to make it an issue that they took seriously. But to see the amount of attention that we saw last year is really incredible, because when people are paying attention and they come to the table, it's really difficult to walk away with the idea that we should be arresting people, that we should shut down this robust industry. It just doesn't make sense. And we're finally moving forward in that direction. It was, as I mentioned, an unprecedented series of legislative sessions, special session after special session. And when given the opportunity to reconsider the prohibitionist approach, lawmakers declined. They did not pass something like Senate Bill 3 again. And that gave the opportunity for Governor Abbott to issue his his executive order. And this didn't grant additional authority. What it did is instruct the regulatory agencies to move forward with the authority they have now to beef up regulations, including things like age restrictions. Hello, we should have had that a long time ago. As well as other things to protect consumers. And we're going to be talking more about that during sessions during this conference. There still is real risk of outrageous licensing fees that would threaten punitively to shut down so many businesses that are operating legitimately, many since 2019 when we first legalized, 18 nationally and 19 in Texas. And one of my biggest concerns is the provision that would effectively wipe out hemp flower with naturally occurring and natural levels of THC. We know that this makes up about 50% of the market right now. And shutting that down, they don't do it explicitly, but by restricting THC so much, it is going to drive consumers to the illicit market where there are no age restrictions, there are no safety standards, and there certainly is no accountability. Instead, opting for sensible regulation that's adequately enforced is in the best interest of public health and safety. We are experiencing some growing pains. We've been moving real fast here ever since hemp was legalized. And now we see the medical cannabis program being developed and becoming more robust, which is incredible. We have worked so hard to bring patients safe and legal access through that program. there are still opportunities for improvement. And we have a session dedicated to offering an overview of this program to talk about the new products that are available, new qualifying conditions, and again, the opportunities for improvement so that we can make this program better for patients, including something that I've long wanted to see, which is independent third-party testing of products. I have a lot of confidence in the operators, but as we move forward from a good public policy standpoint, there needs to be third-party testing. You know, there have been, since in 2015, when the compassionate use program was established, we established the very first legal marketplace for cannabis since 1915, which is when El Paso passed the very first criminalization laws. It took 100 years to establish a legal market in Texas. And in 10 years since then, we have a program that is working but needs improvements. And now we have a multi-billion-dollar industry through the hemp program offering consumers safe and legal access to these products. It is incredible progress that we have made in a short amount of time. And we are winning, and everything is speeding up as we march forward toward more sensible policies that make sense for our state. I've been doing this work since 2012 was the first time I was at the Capitol, working as an advisor to Texas Normal, helping advocates to be their most effective selves in these legislative offices. It's so intimidating, going into an office and sharing your personal experience, especially back then. It was so taboo. You almost didn't even really want to say. And so we can call it cannabis now. But you know, it was such a taboo thing that it was really difficult for patients to have the courage to come to the Capitol, but people did. And that's what helped start opening the hearts and minds of lawmakers to move us forward. And we've seen so much change since then. Still more work to do, but so much has changed since then. We're going to be talking about advocacy first thing in our session after these opening remarks. And it's so critical that in addition to the business side of things, which obviously is huge here in Texas, and we need business owners advocating for themselves and good policies that work for the marketplace. But we also need to make sure that we're prioritizing the real people that are consumers of this medicine that benefit from it every single day, who have found hope in an alternative to the pharmaceuticals that are often dangerous and addictive and with side effects that sometimes cause more harm than their original condition to begin with. Cannabis is an incredible medicine for so many people, and thankfully, Texas and lawmakers are finally taking it seriously. As we continue talking about a legal marketplace and patients and consumers that benefit, we also have to make sure that we're not losing sight of the criminal justice impacts that these terrible policies are having still now and have had for a long time. Expungement needs to continue to be a priority for this movement, making sure that the harm that has been caused by prohibition can in some fashion be rolled back, clearing criminal records so that people aren't saddled with the collateral consequences that come along with them, hindered access to education, employment, housing, child custody. There is so much harm that's been caused by prohibition. And if we can make sure we keep an eye on the criminal justice reform side of things, we're going to be able to help right some of those wrongs. When I talk about cannabis, I think about the Big 10. I think about the plant in general. The government has created definitions for what they call marijuana and what they call hemp. And it's important that we know the distinction so we can keep up and have those meaningful policy discussions. But the definitions in the law of both of those things are cannabis. So keeping an eye on the big picture, that this is about the plant, this is about the people that benefit from it. And that's the message that we want to continue delivering to lawmakers. It's one marketplace with multiple sectors. There's room for operators, for consumers in all of these different areas. We want to focus on safe and legal access and industry accountability through proper regulatory enforcement. And again, we're drawing it back to the human impact of our cannabis policies in Texas. You know, this movement continues to grow. It's not just a marketplace. It is, in fact, a movement of people who understand the real life implications of these laws. Here at this event, we aim to foster and create a space necessary for cannabis stakeholders to come together. And sometimes that means there's going to be tough conversations that get us moving forward. We won't always agree. There are going to be different perspectives, but I can say with certainty that it's an imperative that we collaborate and that we unite to advance meaningful policies during the next legislative session, which is going to be here before we know it. Let me tell you, there's only 9 months until pre-filing begins. That's 9 months to get legislation drafted, get buy-in from lawmakers and stakeholders, and have legislation to present that we can all get behind, at least as much as possible. There's room for everyone in this movement. The political timeline, I mentioned 9 months until pre-filing. Let's back it up a little bit. Here we are, the end of January. Primary elections are coming up. This is more important than the general election in a lot of ways, mostly because of the gerrymandering that we see in the way that the districts are drawn. For most districts, it's predetermined whether it's a Democrat district or a Republican district. And that's a reality of the politics that we live in. It's a whole other conference to talk about the kind of accountability we need to get rid of gerrymandering in this state. But it is a reality here and now. And when we have our primary elections versus the general election in November, this is the time where each political party decides who they are going to place on the ballot in November. So if you want to have an effect in a district that's already predetermined to be Democrat or Republican, voting in that primary, participating in that part of the process is going to be very valuable to deciding who is going to be serving to represent you when the legislature convenes in January. So we have March primaries coming up. We then have political party conventions in June. This is a grassroots process that each of the political parties goes through, starting at the very local level with your precinct. Basically, your neighborhood groups get together. They talk about all kinds of issues. They nominate candidates and leadership for the party. And one of the interesting things that they do that is really important for our cause is they're working to develop their statewide and national platforms. And they do this in a grassroots way that starts locally through resolutions that are introduced in your neighborhood groups. You draft a resolution calling for safe and effective access to cannabis, and you present that in your neighborhood group for consideration by your neighbors. If they adopt it, it goes on to the next level in the convention process, which is the county level convention. If it's adopted there, it goes on to the state level convention and then again to the national convention. At each layer of this convention process, you have the opportunity to speak in front of the most politically active people in our state, to influence them on this issue. And many of them, I'll tell you, they might not need much influencing. They might just need some leadership. They might just be looking to you to bring the issue up for conversation. We saw this work done in 2014 with the Republican Party as an example, where there was some work done on the Democratic platform as well, and libertarians have been long in support of legalization. But with the Republican Party platform in 2014, hemp was added to the platform. In 2016, medical cannabis was added to the platform. 2016, decriminalization was added to the platform. And this is because of the grassroots action that was taken at every level of this convention process. It's free to participate. This is a part of the electoral process and the advocacy that's necessary. And it helps to build the momentum for our work headed towards 2027. So in the timeline, we're here in the summertime. That's when the conventions are happening. It starts in March, though, builds up to the summer. This is also summertime to be a time where legislation needs to be drafted. That's about the time where we need to be getting some consensus. So think about that timeline and how you want to participate to that degree. November, we have general elections. 6 days after people are elected in November, they start introducing legislation. It starts very quickly with the pre-filing period in November, and then mid-January, the legislative session officially begins. And that's where we begin the sprint portion of the political marathon that we're in a 2-year cycle. Every 2 years, forever and ever, we will be coming to pay attention and participate in our own governance, whether it's cannabis or any of the many issues our country is facing right now. We need to be involved and engaged now more than ever. When we bring stakeholders together with differing perspectives, expertise, and backgrounds, There are most certainly going to be varying opinions and even disagreements. This complexity is not something to shy away from. This is something to lean into at this critical time. Keep an open mind during these conversations all this weekend and moving forward. Express yourself thoroughly. Don't be afraid to engage in the conversations. Let's, of course, lead with kindness and respect. But if you have differing opinions, let's hash it out. This is the space for the industry and for advocates to do this work so that we can move forward with the best ideas possible. So let's kick off this event with intention and setting the tone in the spirit of collaboration and growth. We're going to welcome up our panelists for our first conversation on advocacy. We'll be talking about a little bit more about electoral advocacy, talking about regulatory advocacy, and of course, legislative advocacy. So help me welcome Mitch Fuller, Courtney Holmes, and Liz Miller.
I'll start out by saying I'd like to have been in the room with Dan Patrick when he found out that President Trump scheduled marijuana. Yeah. So alternative modalities to opioids is one of our legislative priorities nationally. I'm also on the National Legislative Committee. So for 5 years, I've been the legislative director for the Texas IFNCP. That's a paid position. We decided that we were going to make sure that we are president capital wearing this. It's why the VFW was founded in 1899 by Spanish American War veterans for legislative advocacy. So I've been on the National Legislative Committee for about 5. So this is one of many part of our portfolio, our legislative priorities. Last session, I testified for 13 amendments of the legislature, 4 in the Senate and 9 in the House. Veteran-related bills don't always go through the Veterans Affairs Committee. So I think a lot of y'all were at those hearings. So in March, it was a 12-hour hearing at Senate State Affairs. I was not there. I was in Washington, D.C. because I was chairman of the National Legislative Committee last year. So I was with the national commander testifying before Congress before a joint session of the Senate House Veterans Affairs Committee. So state commander was there and 2 other people were there. April, 18.5-hour hearing in House State Affairs, 18.5-hour hearing. And I screwed up and signed up late, but I was with somebody, a female, so it was 2:30 in the morning when we walked out of there. The same day as the House State Affairs Committee hearing, Mark Miller committed suicide at the San Antonio VA facility. There was a second suicide in December at the Audie Murphy. There was 2 last year in San Antonio. 18 veterans committed suicide nationally at VA facilities last year. This issue is part of suicide prevention. So the same day as the House State Affairs Committee hearing, I testified on the ibogaine bill. Same day. So ibogaine, hyperbaric oxygen, service dogs, medical marijuana, hemp, all of those alternatives we advocate for. We fought for freedom to defend this country. And a lot of us fought in hostile environments. I'm an Iraq War veteran. And we don't need the damn nanny state. I don't want Dan Patrick. And he said, he goes, I don't care if you're 30, 40, or 50, you shouldn't have access to this. And he's throwing, he made an ass out of himself, throwing products at that press conference. He is beholden to the alcohol industry. So the elephant in the room is the pharmaceutical lobby and the alcohol lobby. They don't want us to have access to him. And another point of view, and Heather and I have talked about this, the VFW, we will not be caught in the cannabis civil war because there is tension between the marijuana and hemp industries. So the marijuana lobby was a factor in the sneaky tactic of getting the hemp ban passed on the continuing resolution to reopen the government. So the president didn't have a choice. So the VFW was in the White House. Tim Jensen, who is the head of the Grunt-Style Foundation, and I'm also on that board. The VFW and the Grunt-Style Foundation collaborate on advocacy. Tim Jensen was right behind the President of the United States wearing his cover when he descheduled marijuana. So, and then the 2 special sessions. So, Dan Patrick and Charles Perry held hostage. They held the education bill up in May. So they held up must-pass legislation. 3 Republicans told me they used the product. 3 House Republicans told me they use hemp gummies, that they didn't have a choice. Dan Patrick gave them no choice. No choice. And so so we need a new lieutenant governor, frankly. I mean, I'll just say that. Seriously. We are so grateful to Governor Abbott. We had a very good meeting with his senior staff in May and another one at the outset of the first special session. He listened to us. And we had a huge press conference. Was anybody at that press conference? Where Dave Walden, myself were there, our partners with the Texas Hemp Business Council, Cynthia Cabrera, they are amazing. So we, we work with them. We are so grateful to Governor Abbott. Governor Abbott was at our midwinter conference in Corpus Christi 2 weeks ago. He listened to us. So we are so grateful. We are so grateful for Governor Abbott. So yeah, and Heather, I want to commend you because you've been in this fight a long time. You've been at the tip of the spear. So thank you. Yeah, it's we're not going to quit. We're not going to quit because this is a factor in suicide. The opiate, the poison, as they called it, is alcohol and the pills. And we were part of the lawsuit. I testified on behalf of the Texas VFW in the fall of 21 when the hemp industry filed a lawsuit against the state of Texas with a virtual hearing. Our now state commander Dave Walden is a plaintiff in that lawsuit on his own behalf. So this cover was part of the lawsuit. You know, two of the dumbest things I've ever heard said, and it's saying a lot coming out of the legislature. Charles Perry, the author of Senate Bill 3. And I'm going to call people out because it was ridiculous to sit there and watch that. I've got PTSD from my combat service. And it spiked going through those damn hearings. Listen to the same BS over and over again. That police chief from Allen, Texas is ridiculous. You know, we had to sit there and listen to the same BS. Here's two quotes from Senator Charles Perry. Alcohol is safer than hemp because it's water-based. Okay. That's a quote. And whoever they is, he goes, they're all saying hemp is the new meth. So unbelievable to sit through that. It's a plan. And in our bags, we've got that body that, our bodies, cannabinoid, all that. It's a plant. It's a damn plant. So just know the VFW, we're in this fight. Texas VFW, we've moved the national VFW. So when we go to DC in March and September, we're going to be advocating to rescind the hemp ban. That's going to be, and so Texas has led the way. The Texas VFW has led the way. We've pushed the national VFW to start taking this seriously along with the Grunt Style Foundation. So
thanks for all you do. And Courtney, you and I met before the last legislative session, and you have a very personal connection. This was your first legislative session, and I think this is a unique perspective because, it's tough coming to the Capitol, and it's tough sharing something so personal. And not only do you have a personal family experience, but your medical background. Can you talk about what led you to reaching out to decide to become an advocate for cannabis?
Sure. All right. How much time do you have? No. So not to jump too deep into my background, but nurse, I'm a board certified functional practitioner, certified in cannabis healthcare and medicine. And those last two certifications came about when I got diagnosed with young onset Parkinson's disease back in 2003. He was 40 years old. And so that kind of sent me on a tailspin as, I think over decades at least. And I don't trust the system at all, like at all. We are 100% pharmaceutical free in our house, 100%, and completely naturally. And what most people don't know, is we haven't really talked about yet, is we have 3 daughters, and one of them has a pediatric neuro condition called cannabis, and really too. And I have followed my intuition, my conviction through all of this. And I have stood strong with absolutely no pharmaceuticals. And, the parents out there, the spouses to loved ones with Parkinson's, it's not an easy path to take. But cannabis has been a huge part of our family's life. I mean, my life as well, stress and anxiety, etc. But what it's done for my husband, for all of these different symptoms, it's pretty miraculous. And we can't survive without it. And, our daughter, it was very hard trying to figure out and navigate because I had to go in and do everything. Nobody helps you. Your doctors don't help you. They don't want to know. They don't care. It's just what pill can you take? You get this side effect. What pill can you take for that? Like, absolutely not. And so for her, it has been, CBD, CBG on top of all of the other natural products I'm giving her. But it wasn't until I decided to use, my gut intuition. I'm like, I can go up pretty darn high there. There's no rules out there for what you can give a kid. Everybody's just too afraid to do it. So I got her up to a therapeutic level and I'm able to grow that. And it's just been amazing. Something that we never thought we would see again. And we did. And so that's a lot of what we do, with our nonprofit and, my other business is we educate and we consult and we help people understand plant medicine because the education is ridiculous. And we can get into this later, but I brought all 3 of my girls, we brought them to testify last spring. And because I have to educate them, like everything you learn in school, ignore it unless they're talking about the meth and the opioids and all that, you can listen. But when it comes to psychedelics like psilocybin, that's a huge part of our life too. When it comes to psychedelics, and cannabis, don't listen to what they tell you. I mean, we educate them because they need real education. And so that is why we showed up to testify and we got to show our girls to stand up what we believe in. I sat up there and I spoke to these lawmakers. I had my 2 minutes. I got to speak for 6 because they had so many questions. And I'm sitting here educating people that make the policies and they have no idea what they're talking about. They don't have a clue. And, I'm telling them about all the different administration methods, all the different ratios, etc. They didn't know. And, and I explained to them, why we are part of CPAC. Because we have to go out of state and all of our products because I know we're working on it. I know things are coming, but it's not quick enough. And the restrictions are ridiculous. You can't, it's not pharmaceutical. Cannabis is a plant, like you said, Mitch. It is a plant, it's not a pill, and you can't treat it with pharmaceutical framework. You just can't. It's self-titrating. And everybody in the room should know that. And if you don't, I'm telling you now, it is self-titrating. And that's how we figured out my husband, what worked for his symptoms. It was trial and error because we knew the dispensaries that we could go to and they educated us. It was incredible. We had to try the different methods, the different strains, the different ratios, in order to figure out what really worked for us. Had we stayed in Texas, we wouldn't be sitting here today because you just can't, you don't have access. And so that is a little bit of my passion behind all of this. Well, and my first experience
For that long, she was here for the
18 and a half hours. Started on April 7th and then on April 8th.
I call it the state Albany thirst.
And 99% of the people testified. So that's the other thing. But the large majority of every hearing were against it. And I got invited to testify in the second semester. It was heard in House Public Health, new committee to your point. So I'm going to Columbus, Ohio for the National Convention. So the city office contacted me, the committee chair. We'd like to invite you to testify. And as you all know, if you testify, you have further testimony asked and invited. Invited to also thank you. Awesome. I won't have to sit through this. I sat in the chair on my computer screen for 4 hours. I was on the on 4. So to your point about educating, this was a new committee still set up. Oh my God, here we go again. So invited to testify and wait for 4 hours.
Well, and this is the work. This is where that's happened. All of these personal experiences, stories, information, such as you had with your medical background as well, but that your knowledge will have to be put on the record. Right? These are the conversations that are running a foundation for the future of cannabis in Texas forever moving forward. And so getting it on the record, helping them to better understand the issues that are home with you, but it's something so critically important. Not only match with your experience right now, but only for you is, let's talk about your representative for the level of the conference in Texas, and we're all Texas long, but you're on the and you have a unique background. So it's that. Heather, go with that.
I'm taking that order. I'm going to school right here across the street.
So here, I didn't go back at the folks in the coach that you know, respect.
So I've always been a policy maker, and I've also kind of always had some health issues. And turns out I have a hereditary connective tissue disease called Electoral syndrome, and with that I have some autoimmune and neurological and seizures and lots of pain, yada yada. So I've almost been, let's say, someone who appreciates cannabis. It became more and more a necessary tool for me to function in the world. So I started getting involved in activism, primarily mostly cannabis at first. I care about all the civil liberties. And I worked at other areas too, but for the cannabis thing, probably the longest. And the reason I'm effective in it is the same reason you will be at are, which is personal experience, right? These guys, whether it's cannabis or any issue, lawmakers and policymakers are legislating and working on way more issues than I would like them to. That's my bias. But in the meantime, they can't know everything about everything they're legislating on. It's just a lot of stuff. So they want to hear from you. You have unique knowledge about something that our parts are getting or whatever it is that they are legislating on and shouldn't be. You'll be shocked to hear they are actually legislating on whatever that topic is. And they need your expertise on that. And on cannabis, look where is that more true. I mean, it's true on everything, but cannabis is complicated. Even the people in this room, we occasionally might misspeak every now and then on something. These guys have no idea what they're doing. So that, go and give them the knowledge that you have, they don't have. You want to fight it yourself first, of how you rationally your face shadow, or are you kidding me? You're really going to pass this bill when you don't even know how to pronounce it.
We're just Tango Foxtrot.
Yes, exactly. So you might want to practice that, frame of mind. I'm not saying you need to, bow to them, but, practice looking down that particular. And go share your personal experience and expertise, and that's why it's been effective. I mean, it helps that I'm a lawyer and I can do that stuff with them. But, also, we have a good experience working to influence the person lawmakers. That will, help them off board. The conflict that do not take anyone regardless of the alternatives of their name. It's worth with it, going to take conservative. That's not my experience. I mean, something else more with this. So, I like just going back there and working with what I got, whatever's down here, what we have, because is all Republicans and Democrats. And Republicans are from the government and one party, so if you want to make a difference, we need to go out there and talk to them. And they need to be educated. They want to know what their constituents are. And that's been a lot of the work I've done over the last decade and a half, is let them know. I had a candidate, I won't name him right here, said to me last week, well, it's 50-50 with Republicans. No, it's not 50-50. Republicans are not fans of prohibition as a rule, and this particular group would end it tomorrow. They would not want anybody up for nonviolent crimes. So that's a lot of the work we need to do, is just explain it to them what time it is. And when I would go in, even not this past session, but the session before, and talk to primarily most of the legal staffers and say, let's change penalties, or whatever the thing was, and they say, oh, Liz, we can't do that. All these old people these old Republicans will call and be so mad. And I would tell them, have you met a boomer? Who do you think invented this? Who do you think is on the back porch every weekend? Right? So, and they didn't believe me, and guess what they found out this session? I was right about that. And I had so much fun going into their offices while they're getting stacks of analog letters from all these old people that trying to take their arthritis and injury. So that was a huge victory. Even more than defeating him, I think, in the political advance was the moving that rhetorical Overton window, so that Republican lawmakers can figure out what time it is, how their constituents feel. So that, I think, is going to be huge of getting something that we all live with next time is getting a bill that sort of looks like what Republican Liberty Parties we want, frankly. And we can get that stuff that I think really use up if you never as a Republican, please have them look at this group so I can go in their offices with numbers and say, hello, Republican lawmaker, I want you to information, and then I can put the off out to have all the Republican people in this group make it, you know, when I make the phones ring, it makes a difference, let me tell you. As also, again, I won't name which one, but one of the senators told me this during the special, he said, every Republican phone call is like 7 Democrat phone calls. And every phone call during the special is like 10 of the regular. So I was doing that in my head. I don't need that many of y'all, just a few more. We can make a difference.
Next time, check out what we concerned Republican. Is a hurry. We may need a freedom. It's Texas is not pretty. So we have to, you know, for perspective, we have to educate them on that. This is not free.
Or the computer, or any people that when you down work with. Being deceived or principal with a party that is the end of law, and that's where I would help God protector. You're being a political coming in, and there is a practice growing demographic. We're going a lot of this, so there's some of the audience, and for that. But there we go, the better having a pivot of leader on advocacy for years. I think it's faster with doing it for years. Rather than coming to tell their story to help you and keep the laws here. So the mama could full law out there every level in high regard.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Other women, yeah, this guy, Steve Memphis and the guy who will watch it in the syndicate says so. Our national commander, and why don't I look at the first CEO of national commander in our history? He's amazing. So every March, no veteran organization doesn't fight for college load the day. So our national commander doesn't fight for March. And that's why in seconds we get higher meetings and nothing else. We'll get every full side panic. And no, this is a lot of it, but they're going to listen to this, so they don't listen to the individuals, but they'll listen. So that's just, I'm very sure I should with that. So I just think there's a town told them to you know, by law against it, so there's job. And it is important. So our story with this is the pills have been absolutely understood. The pills are a factor that includes Mark Miller Williams is the author said, and a part of every one said, I need help. More talks. I personally have made that choice. I take a pill for high blood pressure. I go on while I'm getting Dave therapy. I've got too many friends who have been developed, including my concept. It is not uncommon for veterans to 70,000 pills a year. I'm sorry, 10,000 pills a year. You may not have any restrictions, and you got very small pills to your paying, and you're still more for your brain. Why and today, you know, whether they interact with each other. Side effects, exactly. And I also still take alcohol. So it's an evil, terrible cycle, and typical, it's refreshing, facts inside. So Dana Loesch, thank you. And she went into podcast, so she went after that was like, yes. And, you know, so when the president scheduled marijuana, that's I don't know, 3 o'clock. Like so.
Patrick and Charles Perry's like, oh my God, that's our hero. What did he do? So
well, you're more that we have to keep military terms and we have to keep pushing forward. And we'll work with my friends in this time stuff being disruptive. Work with our past national commander. On across over the line. Don't stay there before our back. So you know, go chairs. We're going to be direct. Like trade Mitch now. Let's find before Congress. Something like this. This is military night. So we are going to make sure that they understand how important this is. And the other factor too is during that hearing, you had these moms get up there and talk about, my son, they died because of this. No one died eating a 10 milligram. That's freaking ridiculous to say that. And their kids were the adults, and they probably had some psychological factors. There were probably some other things in their system. They probably smoked marijuana, at least that's what led to a psychotic episode. But it was powerful to see mothers with their children talking about the value of this to sort of counteract that in adolescents, not adult children under the age of 18. So, I mean, that's important. So, and nationally, Rand Paul, and I want to come in Senator Cruz too. Senator Cruz opposed this. I mean, it shocked me, was a surprise to us. Credit where it is due, man. We'll take it. But Rand Paul was the leading voice, and it's ironic because Rand Paul and Mitch are both senators both accept. But Rand Paul's really coming to this from multiple perspectives, including farmers. Well, I will tell you, there's no more powerful voice than veteran farmers. So we're gonna raise hell. We're gonna make that happen in DC. Thankfully, we've got till November, so we've got some time. But that's fine.
You want to add those mothers that were there, that were different doubts their family has experienced about making sure that we are with all of these and looking into factors that were these products are regulated or something to the market and having those more in-depth conversations because we all care about public health. We all care deeply about people. And the only way that we are going to see in the product that is let people know that this is
an underlying health issue is to move forward with education. And so we've got two panels this conference, one focused on cannabis and public safety, another on cannabis and public health, to dive into these issues. How often are people experiencing cannabis-induced psychosis or cannabis use disorder? Certainly it exists, but how prevalent is it? And how do we get to the underlying issues that can help to avoid those kinds of things happening to people? So just had to make sure that we chime in on that.
And to your point specifically, again, back to Senator Charles Perry, I called him out in I forget which of the 4 hearings because there was 4. And I think it was the first special session when they reintroduced the bill that the governor vetoed, which was, okay, that's the definition of insanity. He's not gonna sign the bill. But Senator Perry cherry-picked data from the VA suicide report, talking about that cannabis abuse disorder. Well, that's street-level marijuana. That's no telling how much THC. And I said, Senator, you're cherry-picking. You're cherry-picking that data. You're comparing hemp, 10 milligram hemp gummy, to street-level marijuana, and that's fair. And it could have been laced with fentanyl or God knows what. So yeah, we have to call them out when they say stupid things. Seriously, and it's their lies and it's stupid, and we got to call them out on that. And it was so hard to listen to it over and over and over again. It was, and I see a lot of North and South up here because your first time was like you jumped deep into the pool right off the bat. I've been doing this a while, like a lot of us, but it was the most insane session I've ever part of, for sure.
And so you have this professional background, your personal experience, and you decide, I want to get involved. What is it that makes a person decide for the very first time to come to the Capitol and testify in front of a panel of lawmakers when the heat is on, and then to get these questions? And luckily you were very well prepared, but talk us through the idea to, have the gumption to come to the Capitol.
Well, I hit my breaking point. I think I realized that I couldn't be quiet anymore. The stigma is absurd. We have to continue to educate and get rid of the stigma behind it. But the lack of access, like I talked about having to leave the state and, our family relies on it. And so this fire was building inside of me, and I spend so much time educating people. And people are afraid, they don't understand. And by the way, you cannot die from cannabis. You literally cannot die. It is never in the history of ever has anybody ever died from cannabis.
Remember the joke about the guy that had a ton of it fall on his head, and we all shared that on the internet? Somebody finally died from cannabis.
I love it. I love it. But the problem is the synthetic stuff that's out there, all the dangerous things, which
honestly, if we had done this right from the beginning and had a proper medical program, patients don't want the synthetic versions. They had to have them because that was their only choice, because we held their hands and said, you can't have the good stuff. So therefore they went behind and they created all of these synthetic, cannabinoids, et cetera, whatever they're ingesting, that could be the issue, but real cannabis is not the issue. And I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go down and we're gonna go talk, because I have to fight for him. I have to fight for my kids. I have to fight for every other parent out there, every spouse, every caregiver, every patient, every medical professional that's trying to make a difference. And, I think where we realized we had to speak up is, I didn't just get educated on it, I use it. I know the plant. I know how it works for myself, for a child, for a person with a neurological condition. And so that really is what sparked the fire in me. And it felt good. I mean, it was empowering to sit there for 6 minutes and educate them, because they really did see, they didn't know half of what I was talking about. And that was really nice to be heard. But it was also infuriating, because I'm like, you make the policy and you have no idea what you're talking about. And so it was a really good experience, and I'm glad that I did it. And I'm going to continue to do it, because we have to keep up the fight.
Veterans are a powerful voice, but I think the most powerful voice are mothers. I think we would all agree on that, moms. Absolutely.
Yeah, if you're going to the Capitol, the vets have done, we wouldn't be anywhere near where we are in this state, and probably all the others, without veterans leading the way. But on this issue especially, but generally speaking down there, yeah, a vet and or a mom, bring one with you if you can, for sure.
So we have time for a few questions. I know there's a wireless mic back there, if we can get a volunteer to see if there's any questions from the audience.
I want to give a shout out to my buddy Chase Beardy back there too. Will you?
Here's Chase.
Right there.
Hey, Chase.
He's a stalwart advocate too. Good to see you, buddy.
Yep, Coalition of Texans with Disabilities, longtime allies, and Chase will be participating on a panel discussion about patient protections. Definitely something that we need to build up, that's for sure. Let's go ahead to our first question.
Of course, you know me with a question. First, I want to start with a comment, though. Something I volunteered for Americans for Safe Access and Development, and I think it's really important to point out in each of these kinds of meetings. Thankful for everybody who sponsored the event, and everybody who's attending the event, and everybody who donates to these types of organizations, because these organizations these events wouldn't happen without you all. And, recurrent small donations work. But we need these organizations that help to support and organize and get the word out in order to see change. If we want to see that change, we need to support the people who are making it happen. So first thing there. But the second thing there, in Texas, we kind of have a unique situation with hemp, and it's kind of grown from Texas. I feel like the hemp industry kind of started in Texas because of our independence and freedom-loving spirit. All of these hemp providers, manufacturers and things kind of went out on a limb with their wonderful attorneys to figure out a way to make access happen in this limited state. But Mitch, as you said, one of the things that kind of holds this movement back is this division between hemp and cannabis, and this is something that I've seen as an issue since 2018. How do you see us overcoming that? Does anybody on the panel, Mitch, you mentioned it, so I'm sure you've thought about it, maybe directed at you, but anybody else who sees, and Heather and I have had conversations about this, and Heather has been doing a great job of trying to bring hemp into this movement that we've had since before 2018. But it's nice to see a lot of different hemp players here. Would be great to see more, but how do you see that happening, the collaboration there?
Don Ohlmeyer was a longtime sports producer, Monday Night Football, all of that, and he's got a great quote, and I think applies. He goes, "The answer to all your questions are money." This is a financial issue, and Heather and I are familiar with somebody who turned on us inside of our tent. I won't say that person's name, but that was painful to watch. And he was prominent. He was a prominent veteran in this space, and he betrayed us. He and I had an agreement, that we're not gonna make cause that split. VFW will advocate for the expansion of the TCAP program, and we remain committed to that. And he was very much, he used TCAP, and he said, I'll advocate, I'll make sure I'll advocate for him as well. He betrayed. So it's important that we try to speak the best we can with one voice. And we've got veterans who don't want to use the TCAP program. That's not, our view is this: let me choose, let her choose, let her choose what works best for us. And frankly, the TCAP program is a state-sponsored monopoly. That's the reality. They've increased the number of licenses, and our view is it's going to take a while to get that expanded. But we got veterans who don't want to be on the list. They're concerned about their Second Amendment rights. We've got cases and examples of the Second Amendment right being affected because they're using medical marijuana. And so that the VFW is adamant about that as well. But I think coming to the table and make sure and talking to each other, and don't have the circular firing squad, because we have to educate elected officials. Cannabis is both. It's marijuana and it's hemp. And I choose to use hemp consumables, the gummies. They're hugely benefit to me. I feel like I'm in Iraq every day in a convoy when I drive by 35. My PTSD spikes every day in my daily commute. And what helps me? Hemp-derived consumables. But to answer your question, I think this forum, and Heather's been a leading advocate of this, to get everybody in the tent and talk to each other and make sure that individual Texans and individual Americans want to be able to choose which one they want to use. And it may not be cannabis. I've seen veterans transformed by service dogs, hyperbaric oxygen, ketamine, the psychedelics. We're huge on it. Thank you, former Governor Rick Perry, and the Special Operations community, and the Electoral brothers, and other former SEALs who have pushed the envelope on psychedelics. And so I want to call out somebody on a positive way. Thank you, State Senator Tan Parker. He led the way on getting psychedelics. And I know a lot of Republicans wanted to be with us on Senate Bill 3, just couldn't. And that was Dan Patrick. That was Dan Patrick driving that. But y'all talk to each other. I know there's hemp and marijuana folks in the room. Talk to each other, man, and understand that the veteran community wants all options on the table.
There's room for parallel programs, just like in other states, and I just absolutely refuse to accept that it is one or the other, or one at the detriment of the other. We can have both. We can do well with both, and that's exactly what we should be doing.
And I don't think that's unhealthy necessarily for policy making, to have people who are out there with unique knowledge and perspective and understanding on hemp. And then people, we have Chase working on the disability, right? I want all those people and ideas and points of view represented. Each group has unique perspective in, the hemp industry or the medical industry. Each will have unique knowledge about the potential pitfalls. So if we have all those players, we'll get better policy. We just also need people in the room who, like me, less prohibition. That's probably what I'll keep saying. They know I'm going to keep saying that to them. I'm just out about that. But as long as you have people in there who are talking about the broad issues too, you'll be fine. I think that's okay. As long as we're all professional and polite and keep talking to each other, I think that's a good thing.
Let the free market decide too. Last I checked, this is a capitalist economy, so let the free market decide.
But day by day, but of course, the values, the principles that this country was founded on, that so many of us believe in, let's be consistent to those values.
Yeah, we don't need to be afraid of the competing policy cooks in the kitchen, and I think hopefully that'll help us do everything the Texas way.
Texas way, that's right. Well, I think we have time for one more question before we wrap up this session and move on to the next. Anyone have any questions about advocacy? I know we talked mostly about legislative advocacy. I mentioned our electoral advocacy and opportunities for engagement. One thing we haven't mentioned yet is rulemaking. This is an open public process in addition to the legislative side of things. Once the legislature kind of creates the infrastructure for the laws and the program, the regulatory agencies kind of put meat on the bones. They're the ones with the details on how these programs are administered and enforced. And right now we're going through the rulemaking process, which just recently concluded with the Department of State Health Services. But there are going to be ongoing opportunities to give public input on the regulatory side of things. So make sure that you're keeping an eye on that and looking at it as just as much of a priority as going to the Capitol and testifying before a committee or going to visit with legislative offices. And unless we have any questions, then I think that we'll wrap up and thank the panel very much.
Can I make a quick ask of everyone here? Like you said, by the time we come back in January and start, much of the cake will be baked. But we're, as Heather was saying, we're in primary season. This is a huge opportunity. A lot of these candidates are out there right now. They're asking you to ask them questions. They're available. The media are there. So please go to campaign events, hop on the Zoom calls, whatever it is, find those opportunities, invite candidates to your group on a Zoom call or something. Get an opportunity to ask them about this issue and let them know how you feel, because now's the moment to get in their heads. That way, when we are down there next session talking to them, they're going to have that feel, yes, this is how my constituents feel. This is what they want from me. And we have to do that work now. We can't wait on that part.
I want to thank the media. There's a lot of media here, and we've got good relationships with the media. Mike Warren with Fox News 2 or 3 times a year reaches out to me to go on camera with him. So I want to thank the media for letting us, giving us the vehicle to tell the story. So the media is critical to getting this out there and helping to educate the public and elected officials.
Very good. Well, a little bit of housekeeping. So this is our main stage, and this is the room called Under the Oaks. Up on the 3rd floor are where our 2 breakout rooms are and an overflow room should we need that. There's a map in your program to show you where the different places are and where the different sessions are that you're going to be most interested in. The next session in your program mentions 11 o'clock. It actually starts at 11:30. So take this time to visit our sponsors up in the sponsor lounge, grab some coffee, visit with the folks that you've recently met or are reconnecting with, and we'll be getting programming started back at 11:30. Enjoy the break.
Thanks, everyone. Please grab me while you're here. I'll be here all weekend. I'd love to talk to everybody.